Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is subject. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways this verb is used. The first way you might hear subject used is to mean to cause or to force someone or something to undergo a particular experience or a particular form of treatment. A second way you might hear subject used is to mean to bring a person or a group of people, like an entire country, under one's control, and typically this is done by force. This second definition might be something you encounter if you're studying history or reading historical types of accounts and literature. You should know that subject is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form subjecting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. The base verb subject ends in a T sound, so our ed is going to add an extra syllable and make an id sound. Subjected, subjected. You'll be happy to know I don't have any additional phrasal verbs with different meanings for us to study, so that will allow us to look at making sentences in the simple past tense and the present progressive with our verb of the day. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that was completed at a known time in the past. Sometimes this is referred to as a definite point in time. The thing to remember is that with the affirmative, you're going to use that ed form of the verb no matter what the subject is. So that form will not change. Let's look at an example sentence. The company subjected workers to COVID-19 by requiring all employees to work without PPE. This was an issue back in March 2020 as the virus started to spread around the United States. There were certain workplaces that were not safe, but companies were telling people you still have to come in, and therefore they put themselves at risk. This is sort of tying back again to that first definition of the verb we looked at a few minutes ago. If I want to make a negative simple past tense sentence, I'm going to use did not and then the base verb. So notice I'm not using the ed form in the negative. Here's another example. We didn't subject their answers to research. So the treatment here is sort of a lack of treatment. We didn't do additional research. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, you should start with did, then you'll have your subject, and then the base verb. So again, no ed here in our yes or no question. Did the coach subject them to a greater risk of injury? The them here is probably athletes or members of their team. Now let's take a look at the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that is happening right now, or to describe an action that is in progress. To form this verb tense in the affirmative, we're going to use a present form of be. So if our subject is I, we'll use am. If our subject is you, we, or they, we'll use are. And if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is. So we have our form of be, and then we use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example sentence. Russia is subjecting the activists to a slow death. This unfortunately is a sentence describing something that's happening right now. A particular person who's been a very outspoken critic of corruption in the Russian government is now being treated in a way that is likely going to lead to his death. Now, if you want to make a negative present progressive sentence, we need to insert not after our be verb. You might hear some people use contractions like aren't or isn't, but I want to note there is no contraction with am. So am not, and then our ing form of the verb cannot be shortened. Here's another example sentence. The country isn't subjecting racial minorities to torture or abuse. So again, this is tying back to how a group of people are being treated or the treatment they are receiving. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the present progressive, you're going to start with a form of be. So again, am, is, or are. Then we'll have our subject, and that subject needs to match the form of be we used previously. And then we'll use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Are government scientists subjecting the vaccine to additional tests? Again, tying back to treatment, how something is being treated. Now, let's spend a few minutes looking at some words that are related to our verb subject. The first word we're going to look at is the noun form of this word. You'll notice the spelling is exactly the same, but the pronunciation is different. So as I've been saying the verb subject, hopefully you can hear that the second syllable is a little bit louder and I say it a little bit longer as I pronounce that verb. But when I say the noun, I'm going to put the stress on the first syllable. Subject. So I'm saying the first part a little bit louder and longer. The noun subject can have a number of different meanings. We're going to look at 3 of them today. The first and probably most common way you'll hear it used is to refer to a branch of knowledge that is either studied or taught in school. This just doesn't have to be for younger grades. This extends into colleges and universities as well. So an example of this usage would be, math was my favorite subject. True sentence there. A second way to use the noun subject is to refer to a person or thing that is being discussed, described, or dealt with. Here's an example of that. What was the subject of the talk? Okay. So here I might be referencing a professional speaker and wanting to know what was the thing they were discussing. Said another way, the topic. You might also think here about when you send emails. There's a subject line to your email. You're trying to give the receiver of your email message a clue about what is being discussed inside the email. A third way you'll hear subject used connects to English class, grammar class. And so in grammar, when people refer to the noun phrase that functions as one of the main parts of a sentence or a clause, many people in their early studies learned to have a complete sentence, you need a subject and a verb. So a question you might hear a teacher like myself say in class would be, can you identify the subject in the first sentence? So if we go back to that earlier example, math was my favorite subject. Math is the subject. Was is my verb. Subject, again, stress on the first syllable, can also be an adjective. When it's used in this way, it means likely to be affected by. An example of that could be, she has been subject to severe headaches for many years. So she has been affected by headaches. Subject can also be an adverb. When it's used, its meaning is conditionally upon. And again, we're putting that stress on the first syllable. So it's just the verb that's pronounced a little bit differently. A way you might hear this adverb used, it would be in the sentence, subject to the court's approval, the prosecution and the defense have agreed to a plea agreement. So this phrasing is really common if you pursue legal studies or work in the legal field. two sides that seem opposed might find a way to reach an agreement, but that agreement is conditioned upon the court approving it. So an outside source looking at and making sure that the agreement is fair to both sides. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.